Let's go ahead and go on to our first story. So, our first story is the story of Gef The Talking Mongoose. Now, his name's Gef, but it's spelt G-E-F. He's this little, well, he's a talking mongoose. I think that kind of is obvious, but it's a little more than that. It was almost he looks like a mongoose, but nobody really ever saw him. He acts like a talking animal would, if you think, animals can talk, but he also has qualities of like a poltergeist. It was a curious case back then. Well, I guess it's a curious case now, but, man, this is going to be a hard episode to record. Okay, let me get centered here. So anyways, Gef the Talking Mongoose. So this story took place back in the 1930s. It was in the Isle of Man, which is somewhere in Europe. Maybe it's off of England. I don't know. Let's just see if we can get through on this episode. So, Isle of Man is somewhere on the planet Earth. I believe it's in England. And so anyways, there's this family living out there. They're called the Irvings. And it's a mother and a father and a little 12-year-old girl. And they start to hear little voices. No. Let me back up here. So the dad's name is James. This is going to be a rough one, guys. Just get through with this. We can get through this together. So the dad's name is James, and they start hearing like these weird noises in their walls of this house in the 1930s. So it's not the most well put together house. And he keeps hearing these like noises, and for whatever reason, he decides like, I'm going to start talking to these noises and figure out what they are. And he realizes that the noises change. So he begins like growling at one point there's like a growling come from the wall. He growls back, and then it seems like the creature responds to him. So he's like, well, that's interesting. So he's talking to the wall. He's talking to the wall for a while, over the course of weeks and stuff like that. And like if he growled, the creature on the other side of the wall would make a similar growl. So then he's like started making other animal noises. And eventually he could name an animal, and it would, like if he goes chicken, it would go bark, 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 bark. And he goes, every so often it sounded like it was a gurgling, like it was trying to learn English. And this is where I say, and I'm sure you're saying as well, how do you make gurgling, how do you equate that with having to learn English? Here's the thing, the story is so inconsistent. Because, if you heard anything coming from your walls, you're taking a sledgehammer to it and strangling anything on the other side. Especially if it's making a bunch of animal noises. Eventually it does start talking, though, and introduces itself as Gef. And I don't know, it's spelled G-E-F. I don't know if that's normal for Isle of Man, or if the mongoose is like, spell it with a G and leave off an F. But anyways, so James Irving is like, oh, I got this hyper-intelligent mongoose. Even he said he was a mongoose from New Delhi. And he's like, Jeff's like, hey, I'm a mongoose from New Delhi. And so James begins talking to it. And it gets to the point, there's a bunch of weird stuff that goes on with the story. So anyways, the mother doesn't like Gef, and the mother doesn't like Gef, and Gef doesn't like the mother, so they don't interact much. But the young girl, she's 13, her name is Vori. That's a bizarre name. So the mongoose talks to James and talks to Vori, and Vori actually, Gef will show himself to Vori. James only just catches, fleeting glimpses of it. And he's basically like a total dick. And that's where he has the qualities of a poltergeist, where he'd, throw stuff and be mean, and he'd say, jacked up stuff to these people. One time he called James Irving, a big fat potato head or something like that. And, so at one point, Gef is, really, really, getting on Vori's nerves, in a creepy way, in a stalker way. And Vori's like, I'm tired of Gef. I'm tired of Gef running around this house, and I'm seeing him and stuff, and he's just being a dick to me. So the parents are like, okay, well, let's see if we can figure out another room you can stay in. And Gef doesn't like that. Okay. He didn't call him, let me back up here. Because he didn't call him a big fat potato head. What he called him. So James was reading the newspaper very slowly. And Gef wanted him to read it quickly for whatever reason. He said, "Read it out, you fat-headed gnome." So, I mean, maybe fat potato head was funnier, I don't know. But anyways, fat-headed gnome is what he called James once. Anyways, Vori got sick and tired of him, like, dicking around with her. So the parents get together and they're like, let's have a meeting and figure out what room to put you in that we can, so you don't have to interact with Gef much, because he couldn't find him. And then, like, as they're having this meeting, Gef says, "I'll follow her wherever you put her," which is creepy. Here's a little thing. So James, at one point, they're like, "We'll put you, Vori, you can sleep in your bedroom, and we will barricade you in, like, you can barricade yourself into your room, so when you sleep, you don't have to, like, hear, like, creepy mongoose noises while you're trying to sleep." And here's a quote. "Soon we saw the top of the door bulging in as though some terrific force were thrusting against it." That's some 50 Shades of Grey shit right there. "Soon we saw the top of the door bulging in as though some terrific force were thrusting against it, but the door held." Then Jeff's yeah, this is probably good I'm doing this episode. Then Jeff's I know the word means weird, but then Jeff's queer high voice said, "I'm coming in!" A few seconds later, a heavy pot of ointment. A few seconds later, a heavy pot of ointment kept in the room crashed against the bedstead. It should be bedstand, but whatever. Bedstead. That might be a real thing in the Isle of Man. But, so, he basically, like, when they were like, "Stay out of our daughter's room," he's, like, thrusting against the door and breaks his way in. The door bulges. And he has a queer high voice. So anyways, he busts in. Now, of course, Vori ends up, like, kind of getting over her fear of Gef, and they kind of start living with it, but what happens is word gets out that there's this little mongoose guy running around this house talking mongoose. And so, of course, paranormal investigators start showing up at the house. And, the neighboring town knew of it. People in the area knew of Gef the Talking Mongoose. And then these psychic investigators show up, see what's up. And this should be your first clue something's going sideways with this story. Nothing happens. They don't hear him. They don't see him. Nothing happens. Now, the family would be like, "Hey, Gef, say something. Say something." Nothing. Now, other psychic investigators would come out, and they would hear Gef being like, "Get him out of here. He doesn't believe in spirits. I don't like him, that knucklehead." And they'd be like, "Oh my god," psychic investigators like, "Oh my god, I totally heard that." At one point, actually, this was interesting. So at one point, so there's this theory that poltergeist activity is caused not by the spirit. Like poltergeist activity, the difference between that and a ghost is poltergeist is when stuff moves around your house, like doors being open and stuff's flying around, and there's a strong thrusting against your bedroom door. That's generally classified as a poltergeist. And there is a scientist who came up with the theory that poltergeist activity is actually not ghosts. It is caused by mental anguish. It's basically more like psychokinesis than anything else than that. Than like a spooky spirit, it's more like your mental, you're basically, your mental is leaving, like your mental anguish can't be contained in your body or in your brain, so it has to find another outlet. His name was... Dude, that's a dope name. Sounds like a Lord of the Rings villain. Nandor Fodor. Maybe not a villain. He could actually be like anyone. That could be the most normal guy in Lord of the Rings. Where does that take place? Middle Earth. Nandor Fodor could like be the guy who delivers your mail. But in any other universe, he'd be the bad guy. So anyways, he came out and he had a couple interesting theories. But the main one was first he was like, it's kind of poltergeisty, kind of not. He ended up thinking that it was not... Generally, poltergeist activity is caused by young kids going through adolescence and they have all this energy and it's like being expelled psychically. His thing was, I think it's the father. I think he had like all these great dreams and desires as a kid, and now he's like locked in. He got a woman pregnant, and he's just the husband and has a kid and all this stuff, and he's just letting all the psychic energy out and so on and so forth. Now, a couple psychic investigators, like I said, didn't hear anything, and some of them did. Some of them brought reporters as witnesses, nothing. They couldn't hear anything. Now, word started to spread that it was a hoax, that it wasn't true. At one point, one of the psychic investigators was walking, and he heard the voice. He's like, oh my God, he heard the voice. Now, he's walking, and the father, James, is next to him, and Vori standing behind him. And he hears the voice being like, he doesn't believe in the spirits. And the psychic investigator's like, that voice came from right behind me, where the little girl is who's following us. And the father's like, no, it wasn't. It wasn't. It was the little mongoose running into the walls. And so that kind of really soured people on Gef. Because this fabled psychic investigator was like, yeah, I heard it. It was the little girl. Eventually, the family moved, the Irvings moved, and Gef didn't follow them. They had no other reported dealings with Gef. James passed away, and the mom and the Vori had to move away. They actually had to sell the farm at a discount because the word in town that it was haunted. No one wanted to buy this haunted house. Which I wouldn't have a problem with it, especially if he was kind of like a dope little mongoose running around. The new owner ended up buying the property. The new owner ended up buying the property, and maybe like a couple months, a year, or whatever later, ended up shooting this giant mongoose, this giant creature that was running around, because there were mongooses in the area, or mongoose. Some guy imported them. I guess I should have said that in the beginning. Some guy imported them to help cull the rabbit population. Anyways, the new owner of the house shot a mongoose, and he's like, I killed Gef. And Vori, now an adult, was like, that's not what he looked like. And now the house is burned down. There's been no Gef sightings. Even in her old age, Vori was like, no, it was totally true, and I didn't like him, and I wish he just left us alone. So again, it's kind of weird. I can understand her saying, no, it is true, and it was a whimsical fantasy of me hanging out with this talking mongoose, or, no, it was all fake, and it sucked because it ended up ruining my life. But she's stating that, no, it is real, and it ruined my life. Like, she became known as the fraud. I guess that would be a reason to keep it up if you didn't want to be considered more of a fraud. I don't know. Do you think, I remember my very first episode on this podcast all those months ago was about talking critters, little talking animals, and obviously not like Gef. They were about how animals communicate with each other, but I think for an animal to be, and it could speak Hebrew and knew all these languages, it was just such a weird, if it's fake, it seems like they made it overly complicated. They could have just said, there's a creature in my walls that throws stuff, or that's complicated. There's a creature on my wall that talks or makes noises or whatever. Or if you're going to fake it, just say there's a ghost in your house. But it wasn't just a talking animal. It was a talking mongoose who came from New Delhi and could throw things and could hear whispers like they were normal conversations and spoke several different languages. It seems, if it was a hoax, it seems like it was an elaborate hoax. It's possible that they were the victims of the hoax, but other people have said, it went on for so long. Either the entire family was in on it from the beginning, because they go, the way that the house, it's kind of cramped up, that one person wouldn't be able to hoax the other people. They did also say that the way, because, the creaks in the wall, I was saying the house wasn't built really well. You could be on one floor talking to the wall, and you would hear the sound somewhere else. But the investigators who came out said that everyone was in the same room. But again, actually, now that I say that, those are the times nobody heard it. It's probably a hoax. But, there's no but to that. It very most likely is a hoax. However, it would be awesome if it wasn't. It would be awesome if there was a little, rapscallion mongoose who was running around your house being like, listen to me, you fat-headed gnome. And bulging your door open. I mean, maybe not the second part. But yeah, Gef the Talking Mongoose. Hoover the Talking Seal I found out about because I was researching Gef. This was a story, and I should say this too. Gef The Talking Mongoose was recommended to me through email from a listener named Antonio, so thank you for that. I had heard about Gef a while back and kind of passed on the story because I was like, And then I said, he sent this to me, I'll do some more research on it, and there's a ton of stuff on Gef. And they found like hair samples and there's like photos and stuff like that. But again, we found hair from Gef, and they send it out to a lab and they go, yeah, it's from a dog or a cat or a rat or whatever. Same thing with little paw prints. And there were mongooses in the area as well. There's drawings of them. If you find a drawing very convincing, it's not really evidence, but Gef The Talking Mongoose. I wish you existed, but I think you are completely fake. Let's move on to the next story here. That was a clip from our daily podcast, Dead Rabbit Radio. Dead Rabbit Radio is available anywhere that you listen to podcasts. It's daily paranormal, conspiracy, and true crime news. If you want to hear the full episode that this clip came from, check the link below. Please like and subscribe. And hit that little bell, too. That does some magical stuff. Thanks, guys.